Hi, Facebook. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. There's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about today. And I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to kind of get situated. And I'm going to ask all of you as you come on to share this on your timeline, as I'm going to be doing on my timeline. I'm hoping that I don't have any technical issues tonight. I've already, in the midst of my setting up, had gremlins shut me down. So just know this: if for some reason in the midst of this broadcast I lose my signal and it shuts down, I will come back. I will come back to you until I'm done, because I got a lot I want to talk about. And one of the things I want to talk about, of course, is R. Kelly and surviving R. Kelly. And so I'm hoping we can survive R. Kelly, you guys, because there has been so much consternation on social media, both sides of both camps, those who are for and those who are against. And so I'm going to talk about that whole R. Kelly situation, but I'm going to try to do it in a way that I think is a little bit different, in that I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I don't need you to agree with me. I don't need you to agree with the victims. I am only going to be speaking from a position of, this is what I know because this is what I've lived. And I am particularly sensitive to victims of anything. Much like, the reason that I come to you guys every week is because I'm very empathetic, if you will, to Black and brown folks who are mistreated by the police. And so I advocate for victims of police violence in a way that most don't, right? Because I was a police officer for 20 years, and so I can speak credibly to police policy and procedure, much the same way I'm going to be speaking credibly tonight about what it is to be a survivor of abuse. And that abuse can be sexual abuse, it could be physical abuse, it could be abuse in the workplace. And your workplace, you understand, could be an office building, it could be a music studio, it could be the post office. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like and what, as a victim, you should do. I'm going to be talking to victims. I'm not talking to fans. I'm not talking to ex-fans. Tonight I'm going to be talking to victims. And I'm going to be talking as a survivor, not of sexual abuse, because I'm not that, but I have been a victim of abuse, if you will, in the workplace, right? And that's why I speak so adamantly about how police treat people, because I've seen police mistreat people internally, right? That means inside the office. That means peer to peer, partner to partner. I've seen police chiefs, police supervisors mistreat police personnel, and that's why I know they have no problem mistreating the public, because it starts internally. And so, having survived myself personally abuse, I get it. I understand. And so that's where I'm coming from. But before I do that, I just want to touch on a couple of quick things, a couple of quick updates. And again, share this on your timeline as you come on. Be sure to like this and tell a friend. So one of the things that I want to update you on is Cyntoia Brown. Governor Bill Haslam in Tennessee did grant her clemency, but it doesn't take effect until August. So she will be paroled, free to go, but not until August. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why he's waiting until August to let this woman out of jail, because you understand all kind of stuff can happen between January and August. So let's make sure that we continue to keep Cyntoia Brown in our prayers between now and the time that she gets out. Also, there's something going on locally in Los Angeles that I just want to touch on very briefly. There is a man by the name of Ed Buck, and I'll share this link with you. But there's a man by the name of Ed Buck, and evidently he's a big donor for the Democratic Party, and he has, for the second time, somehow wound up with a black man dead in his apartment. And I don't know how you wind up with two dead black men in your apartment and nothing seems to happen. But here we are. Last 2 years ago, 2017, there was a young black man who was found dead in the apartment of Ed Buck over in West Hollywood, and they ruled his death some kind of an accident, some kind of a methamphetamine overdose or something, and nothing ever came of it. There was much said here locally in terms of protesting, but with regards to accountability, this Ed Buck, this high dollar donor for the Democratic Party, nothing happened. And so a couple of nights ago, we have another gentleman dead in this man's apartment. Now, his attorney, Ed Buck's attorney, went on television and said that this, has nothing to do with Ed Buck. It's just that he seems to know a lot of people who have situations going on in their life, as if to minimize and mitigate this behavior. So everybody with an issue, everybody with a hitch in their get-along, if you will, winds up being a friend to this very powerful, very well-connected white man, and then somehow dies accidentally by natural causes in his apartment. And so activists, protesters here are not going to let this thing die down, and they are picketing, protesting in front of the apartment building where Ed Buck lives. And so we'll see what happens. But listen, this is not anything that is unusual, in that when there is a person of color who's a victim, somehow circumstances surrounding their death or their injury gets minimized and mitigated, right? This is what's partially going on with R. Kelly. So forgive me if I start jumping around, because that's what's going on with these young ladies. People are trying to minimize and mitigate the fact that they are victims. And I believe more probably would be done if Becky was missing and hadn't been seen by her parents for a couple of years. But again, I'll get to that a little later. So that's what's going on here locally. West Hollywood, Ed Buck, second male black found dead in his apartment. And you can take a look at that link that I just shared with you if you want to know more about the story, for those of you who are not here in Southern California. Also, kind of breaking news right now in Baltimore. You guys were supposed to get a new police chief, guy by the name of Joel Fitzgerald from Dallas-Fort Worth. He's the police chief there. And I talked about this previously in one of my podcasts and one of my Facebook Live broadcasts, because there was a lot of confusion and a lot of discussion with the mayor there, Mayor Pugh, with regards to her selection, because she really wanted this Joel Fitzgerald. And so now he has withdrawn his name from consideration. There were some meetings that were held, and there may be some more. So, you guys got involved in Baltimore, and you attended some of these meetings, and you made your voices be known with regards to concerns that were held regarding this selection. I'm told, according to some of the reports that I read, that he was very secretive about some things that were going on with him. There was a lot of secrecy around the selection of him. And also there was a story about his son being, I think he was arrested in Dallas, and I don't know if it was because he had a gun, but his son was involved in something. And anyway, it was a lot. So he withdrew his name, and the reason that he gave is that he has a son who's ill. Now, I don't know if it's the same son who was involved in these gun charges, but anyway, that's the reason that he gave. And so now I guess Mayor Pugh is going to have to start all over, or pick someone else from her bag of selections, if you will, with regards to a police commissioner there in Baltimore. So listen, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? It pays to speak up. Okay. Next story here locally. LAPD. Two LAPD officers back in 2016, I believe, were arrested for sexually assaulting women, people who they had picked up for various crimes, mostly narcotic-related crimes, and they were requesting that they perform sexual acts on them. And so they ultimately got arrested, and they pled no contest and are both serving, I think, 25 years in prison. But what happened recently and made this news again is that there was a settlement in the case with one of the females. She received a $2 million settlement with regards to officers Luis Valenzuela and James C. Nichols here in LA. Now, according to the LA Times, this is not final because the settlement amount has to go to the city council for approval. So it's not a done deal. A little bit more may be said about that, but actually the assault occurred some time ago. Next police-related story. This one is in Miami-Dade, and I talked a little bit about this on my podcast, which came out yesterday, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about it, but check out my podcast, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks, and you can hear more on this story, but I'll just tell you very briefly. In Miami-Dade, there was a young man by the name of David Brown, who's 17 years old, and he was arrested for that thing that police officers like to arrest you for, resisting, and they also charged him with assault on the police officers in the arrest. But what's important about the arrest of 17-year-old David Brown is that there's video now that shows one of the officers on scene, who actually is a sergeant of police, and he kicked this young man in the head with his shoed foot. In other words, he had on a boot, a shoe, kicked this young man in the head, and that was seen on the video. So now this sergeant, whose name is Gustavo de los Rios, is facing administrative discipline. I mentioned this again here on Facebook because I'm doing a call to action, if you will. And I wanted to make it known here because not everybody that's on Facebook is on YouTube, and not everybody subscribes to podcasts. So I'm repeating this story on every platform for maximum coverage, if you will. What needs to happen, I think, on behalf of this family is that we contact Miami-Dade Police Director, and his name is Juan Perez. And so I am going to also share with you that particular information on my page here for Miami-Dade Director Juan Perez, and reach out to him and make sure that he does the right thing by this family and by 17-year-old David Brown, because you know when you're going through something and it's just you're just one person, one parent, one family, one victim trying to fight a bureaucracy, it's very easy for them to minimize you and devalue you. So I think that if we all do our part and contact Miami-Dade Police Director Juan Perez, we might be able to do something that might help this family. Now, you can email him also, and his email address is Director's Office. That's director with an S, office at mdpd.com. Miami-Dade Police Director Juan Perez also has a Twitter account because remember I told you all of these police departments are very contemporary, and so he has a Twitter account for those of you who tweet and you want to speak to him about young David. You can tweet at jperezmdpd. And before I change topics, if you will, I'm going to see if I can't bring up that story and just share the video of David Brown being kicked in the head, because nobody deserves that. And I think the young man was accused of or thought to have been involved in a burglary or something. But even if that were the case, listen, once a person is in custody, when they're handcuffed, and this young man was handcuffed, once they're in custody and they're on the ground, which he was, laying face down on the ground, handcuffed, you don't get to kick them. Because now it's not about taking the person into custody. Now it's about punishment. It's about inflicting, some serious harm, if you will. So there's a link where you can take a look at the story regarding David Brown in Miami-Dade. And then a little update as I segue into my next story. The young lady that was jumped on by that crazy man in McDonald's, Yasmin James, 20 years old. So she has an attorney who's representing her in regards to that attack, because she's off work, but I read that she was off work because she's off on a workman's comp type situation due to injuries that she received in that assault. And she has an attorney who's representing her. And so I think she's going to be okay in that regard, right? And so that's why I always say, you guys, comply and complain. listen, live to benefit from their foolishness, because at the end of the day, police departments and police and cities have no problem doling out money, so you would want to be the beneficiary of that. And so this young lady has a well-known attorney there in Clearwater by the name of Michael Rayner Goolsby. Now, Michael Rayner Goolsby may be familiar to some of you there in Miami. I think this is where this is. No, it's not in Miami. Somewhere in Florida. Not sure which city. But anyway, this attorney, Michael Rayner Goolsby, is the attorney that's representing the family for Marquise McGlockton. Marquise McGlockton, you might remember, is the young man who was with his family at a Walmart or CVS, and another white man came and confronted his girlfriend, wound up shooting and killing Marquise, and now is his defense is that whole stand your ground situation. The same attorney that's representing the family for Marquise McGlockton is representing Yasmeen James. Also connected to this same story with regards to McGlockton is found out that Pinellas County Sheriff's homicide detective who was involved in the investigation of the stand your ground suspect, well, that detective, his name is George Moffitt. And George Moffitt is now, well, he's been fired. Evidently, George Moffitt, being a homicide detective, he was called in to investigate another homicide, and when he got to the scene, he was drunk. He'd been drinking, and somebody dimed him off. In other words, somebody told on him, and so they gave him a blood alcohol test and found out that he had a .12 and .13, which .8 is legally drunk, right? He was .12, .13, so that means he drove there drunk, good and drunk, and the concern was that not only did he show up to do police work drunk, but, you know, he showed up with a gun drunk, and thankfully nothing happened. But the problem, as I see it, is that, you know, this could taint somehow that whole investigation with regards to the suspect, the white male suspect that's in jail, having shot Marquise McGlockton, because this detective was very instrumental in interviewing people, as well as, I think, the suspect who was ultimately arrested. And now his defense is going to use the fact that he seems to have a problem with alcohol and judgment as a way to create some reasonable doubt about his involvement in that investigation. And so I'm going to try to pay attention to the whole Marquise McGlockton situation as it winds its way through the judicial system and see what happens. But, you know, this detective, Moffitt is his name, he has been involved in several questionable things while during his tenure on the department. It says 11 years before he was hired, he was convicted of DUI. So alcohol seems to be a situation. And then he was involved in a domestic violence dispute in 2010. So, you know, listen, we see police chiefs look the other way. We see them circle the wagons when you have an errant officer, when somebody has shown you who you are and you don't want to believe them, right? So, don't know what's going to happen ultimately with that case, but I will pay attention to it, and I will come back and update you. Also, same vein, police departments don't mind paying. New York Police Department. There's a black police officer by the name of Larry Jackson who was just awarded a $5 million settlement. And the reason that he received the settlement is because a couple of years, was it a couple of years ago? 8 years ago. 8 years ago, he had a party at his home. His wife wound up calling 911 because there was someone who showed up that was armed that should not have been there. Long story short, NYPD came and they wound up beating up Larry Jackson, the guy who lived there. They beat him up. He was trying to tell him, hey, I'm one of you. I live here. This is my house. What you doing? Anyway, they beat him up. I talk about that too on my podcast. Go there, Sergeant Dorsey Speaks. Listen and subscribe. And you can read a little bit more about that whole situation with NYPD officer who is black, off-duty, was beaten pretty severely by his own agency. And the reason that this is news now, it happened 8 years ago, is because he was just awarded this $5 million settlement. So again, police departments, cities, NYPD, they don't have a problem paying, right? Survive the encounter. Comply and then complain. Or I may have to amend that to comply and sue, right? So when I say complain, y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Going forward. Now, let me get into this whole R. Kelly thing, because I really want to talk about this before the gremlins or Facebook police or whoever it is want to intervene and interrupt my feed. So let me say this. There is something going on right now in the news. There is a Cook County prosecutor who has a number that they have made available for anyone who's a victim, because it's very difficult, you guys, to prosecute someone if you don't have a victim. Police can't do anything if there is no victim and there's no one who's willing to come forward. So victims, I'm talking to you right now. I'm talking to you. If you're a victim, there's a telephone number for you to call. Cook County prosecutor, area code 773-674-6492. That's with regards to the whole R. Kelly situation. If you have information that's important, if you are a victim of, or you know someone who is a victim of, contact the Cook County prosecutor. And contact the Cook County prosecutor, because listen, if you're not willing to come forward, you're not willing to speak about it, and I know it's very difficult, and I know a lot of people have a lot of angst about all of this that was going on over that 6-part series, and I purposely waited until I got a chance to see all 6 episodes, if you will, and then just kind of marinate on it a little bit before I said anything. But let me say this about being a victim, and let me say this about these young ladies who decided to write a book about their victimization. I can so relate to that, because, you know, I wrote 3 books, and I wrote these 3 books not because I'm Ernest Hemingway or Terry McMillan or Elin Harris, right? I'm not an author per se. This is not my life's work, but for me, first of all, it was very cathartic. I was able to get some stuff off my chest that was really bothering me. And then secondly, I couldn't get anybody to show any interest in the fact that I was being dealt with in a way that was inappropriate, or the fact that I was being discriminated against or targeted or retaliated against. Not talking about sexual assault. I'm not talking about sexual abuse. I'm just talking about being taken advantage of by someone who's powerful, or by an entity that's very powerful, like the LAPD, or, you know, I talk about the Los Angeles Unified School District, which is a fight that I'm in the midst of right now still. And so the reason that I wrote all 3 of my books started off just because when I contacted the LA Times here and other news organizations, and I was trying to tell them that racial discrimination and malfeasance and possible criminal activity was occurring at the LA Unified School District, crickets. And then when I was wrongfully terminated by the LA Unified School District by the first black woman to ever head that organization, Michelle King, and the Inspector General in the office where I worked, Kenneth Bramlett, his deputy, Frank Kabibi, his supervisor, Jorge Urijo, and the general counsel, the actual attorney for the Unified School District, David Holmquist, when all those heavy hitters went after me, I started blogging because I couldn't get any newspapers to write stories about what I was going through. And then I just decided, you know what, I'm going to put this in a book. So LAUSD, because I know you guys like to monitor my social media. See, you guys, when I got fired, I got an attorney, which they didn't expect me to get. And I shared this with you because I want you to know that there's a basis for what I say. And so I was able to get discovery, and I'm able to know these names, and that's why I named them. And you can understand when I name people is because I have no fear of being accused of saying anything that is defamatory, slander, much like the young ladies in the R. Kelly thing, right? All these people are on there and they're naming names, and listen, Lifetime, these young ladies, there's no benefit to saying something that isn't true, and the remedy for that, you understand, is a lawsuit. And so if any of this stuff that they were saying, if any of the stuff that I say isn't true, LAUSD could shut me down. They could sit me in a corner real easily, but they haven't. And I don't have a problem naming them, and I'm partially doing that tonight because I want you guys to understand that I'm not just pulling stuff out of the air, that somebody didn't just tell me to say this. This is not what I think. I'm telling you what I'm living. I'm telling you what I know. And so I wrote my last book, and I've shown it to you before, but I'll show it to you again. So this is my last book, The Creation of a Whistleblower. I wrote this book because I wanted people to know what I'm going through. I wanted other people, other victims to know what it looks like, what it feels like, and if it's happening to you, what it is that you can do. I wanted people to know what that process looks like, how long it takes to file a retaliation, a discrimination complaint with the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. Probably most of you don't even know that if you're being discriminated and retaliated against in the workplace, the very first step, the very first thing you must do is you have to file a complaint with the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. And I bet most of you probably have no idea how long that takes and what that process is involved. And then when you're done with that process, they will give you a right to sue letter. Because if you don't have a right to sue letter, you don't get any redress or the possibility of going to court and having your story told and heard. And so I talk about all of that in my book, because I want to be a help to others. I guess, I don't know any of these ladies, but I would imagine that for them, writing a book is cathartic. It helps them deal with the situation. And yes, you know, there's some families that are to blame. There's some parents who did some things that make you go, what? But at the end of the day, we're talking about young girls who are easily influenced, who are easily manipulated. And as a parent myself, I could not imagine having a child, no matter the age, out there who I could not talk to, could not pick up my phone, could not go see. And so I understand why this Savage family is intent on having eyeballs, if you will, on their daughter who they say they haven't seen in a couple of years. And so for anybody who's been a victim of that kind of foolishness, or the kind of foolishness that I'm going through in the workplace, understand this: you are good all by yourself. When you come forward, people are going to attack you. Know that. People attack me. To this day, I call them Twitter mites, and for those of you that are on Facebook with me, you've probably heard me refer to them. Every now and then I'll share a conversation that I'm having with one. But see, I'm very clear about who I am and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what motivates me. And so when someone comes after me, I really don't care. It doesn't move me. And what I always say to them is your agreement is not required. I'm not saying this because I'm needing you to concur. I'm telling you what I know based on my lived experience. And so for these young ladies and anybody, for young men, because listen, anybody can be a victim. And so if you find yourself in a situation as difficult as it may be, speak your truth. Speak your truth. And if that means writing a book and folks have angst about it, oh well. Oh well. Because they have a right, I believe, to earn a living, to make income, to generate income however they see fit. And if they see to write a book to do it, to tell their story, why would anybody begrudge them? And listen, black people, if I could just talk to you for a minute, because listen, we understand what it is to complain about something and have people minimize and mitigate our complaint because the things that they do to black women, black men is easily explained away. You guys know this to be true. They do it with police interactions, right? That's why I speak the way that I do for you, because I'm not saying anything that is new and different. I'm just corroborating those things that happen to you, that happen to me on a daily basis or on a regular basis anyway, when we're contacted by the police. And so don't begrudge these young women, and don't be so quick to second guess them, guys, fellas. Don't be so quick to second guess them. Because I would venture to say, but for the grace of God, there go any one of you. And all of us women have probably either been in a situation where something could have gone sideways, or know somebody who's been in a situation where things could have gone terribly wrong and it didn't. And it didn't. And that doesn't mean that you were deserving of it. If it happens to you, I'm going to just share a quick story with you because, you know, this is, I think about this a lot right now with this whole R. Kelly thing. So years ago, I had an opportunity to go to Playboy Mansion, Hugh Hefner, right? Years ago. And the night I was there, I had a white girl who took me. And I was in awe because I was very, very young, very, very young. And I'm not going to date myself, but just know I was real young, right? And she invited me to go because she knew some girls who were some Playboy bunnies. And I was like, well, yeah, I want to go and see what goes on. So we went. And I was in awe, and she was taking me all over the property and showing me all the rooms. And we went in the cave where the grotto spa is. And she told me, you don't get in the spa unless you naked. So yeah, you don't get in the spa, because if you get in the spa, then you understand what happens. So I scurried through there, right, because I knew I wasn't going to be getting in the spa, but it was nice to see. And then she told me after the evening, I left before she did, because the thing that Hef does, that he did, is every night, he had a big party. Every night he had a big party, and he had this amazing dinner that was served. He had a big movie screen room where you go and watch movies. His buddies were there, and the night I was there, one of the people that I remember very clearly was James Caan, because I'm of the opinion that that was a good friend of his and somebody who was always there on the property, and so he was always there, but he was much older than me, as were the other men, and so I was like, ugh. There was a male black there, not going to say his name, a professional athlete. He kind of fixated on me because it wasn't a whole bunch of black people, and he was the only black guy, and I was one of the few black women. And he fixated on me, and, you know, I made small talk with him. But when dinner was over, my girlfriend told me after 10 o'clock, yeah, yeah, that's when the shit go down after 10, right? So, yeah, so since I wasn't there to be chosen, what I did was I said my fare thee wells. At about 9:50, I was headed out to the front to get my car from valet, because I did not want to be there after 10 o'clock, because if I'm there after 10 o'clock and somebody pulls me off into a side room or a corner or behind a bush, and should I wake up and, you know, my nether regions are wet, how do I explain that? Because I really should not have been there after 10 o'clock, because I was told that that's what happens. And even though I was trying to leave at 9:45, somebody could have pulled my little narrow tail to the side in a room and told me, I know you thought it was 10 o'clock, but tonight we started at 9:30. So listen, but for the grace of God, there go I. Things happen. Things happen. And when you put yourself in a situation, or when you're somewhere and you get it wrong, you leave a little too late, you stay a little too long, that doesn't mean that you deserve it. And that doesn't mean that when you're over that situation that you don't get to speak about it in a way that you need to speak about it. And so I'm just very offended by anyone who is being so cruel and so harsh on these young ladies. Now, there is one that I do have a situation, I do have a problem with, and that's Drea. That's the wife, right? Because you probably have seen the video that I've seen. I put it up on Facebook where she's singing his music, and she seems like she's all good with it. So I don't know if that's, you know, trauma delayed. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist, but it's kind of hard to empathize with that one when she's singing his music and doing the things that you've seen her do on that video. But anyway, nonetheless, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I just wanted to say that about the R. Kelly situation, and say that, you know, but for the grace of God, there go I. And we should not be so quick to judge others. Black girls matter. Black women matter. Black men matter, right? And who better to speak to a situation than someone who's been through it? If you were an alcoholic, you don't want to go to an AA meeting and have somebody lecturing you who's never had a drink, right? You wouldn't want to hear from me about police abuses if I don't know what police do. I think, you know, there's value in what I say, because I used to be the police, and I didn't just used to be the police. I was on a major metropolitan police department for 20 years in a uniform. In a uniform. I wasn't behind a desk. I wasn't shuffling paper. I wore a uniform for 20 years. And so when I tell you that, you know, why police officers don't shoot people in the arm, or when I tell you, you know, and you know why they don't shoot in the arm, it's because that's not how they train us, right? I say that all the time. sure it drives other police officers crazy, but you know, nobody's going to say that. Nobody's going to tell the truth. And so you want to hear the truth from somebody who's been through something. So when I talk to you about being discriminated against, retaliated against, and harassed on a job, I tell you that because I've been through it. Who better to tell you than somebody who's been through it? Same thing with these young ladies. Who better to tell you how to avoid being a victim if you're involved in the music industry, or if you have a desire and you don't want to get your head bumped? Who better to help others avoid those pitfalls than somebody who's been through it? So that's my take. That's my spiel, if you will. And that's my show. So until next time, you guys, be good, be safe. Happy New Year. I hope everybody's year is starting off the way you wanted it to. And we'll do this thing again next week. Don't forget my call to action. Don't forget to reach out on behalf of that family for David Brown, Jay Perez at Miami-Dade Police Department. See if we can't get some justice for that young man. So until next time, you guys, be good and be safe.